Hey friends, I wanted to let you know that the following episode is going to be broken into part 1 and part 2. Due to the nature of this interview, I really felt like it was important to break it up into more bite-sized, consumable pieces of content for you. So we are releasing part 1 today, and then on our normal schedule, we will be following up with part 2. So be sure to circle back and listen to both parts of the podcast because both have valuable pieces of information that are important for you to hear about as a wedding venue, as a wedding pro, just in general. So again, thank you for listening, and today is part 1 of the Knot Whistleblowers. Well, hello and welcome to the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah Caffee, and our theme in season 2 is tools of the trade, the pros behind the process. And today I'm joined by my friend, Jennifer Davidson, who you also might know as one of the 3 Knot Whistleblowers. So hello and welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Hi, Tirzah. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, before we, normally I am saying, hey, it's time for Crazy Stories with Tirzah. And I was telling Jennifer, I'm going to kind of not do that because I feel like today's whole episode is a crazy story. And so before we get into all of the content that you have for us today. There's so much. We were just chatting before we hit record, like, oh my gosh, we could be talking for hours, and we're not going to do that to you. But also, I want to encourage you to listen to this whole episode. I know a lot of you will bop it on as you're driving around town, doing chores, doing your workout. But I really encourage you to listen to this whole episode, even if you have to come back at another time, because there is a lot that we're sharing today that is crucial for you to know. And to me, I always feel like knowledge is power, and sometimes we get so busy in the day-to-day of our businesses that we don't take the time to really research kind of why we're doing things and kind of there's so much. And I feel paused today. And I said this to Jennifer. I'm like, this is very unscripted. We have not planned this out. We're just going to go for it and we're going to talk about it. But I was feeling hesitancy to even do this podcast. And honestly, for me to have pause causes me to I shouldn't be afraid to talk about this, and I'm feeling that way. And I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, like, could this affect my career to be having this interview? And the very fact that I feel that way is alarming, that anybody in this industry would make me, and I know other educators, feel pause to even have this conversation. So I want to start by very briefly telling you why I invited Jennifer to be here. Those that have known me for a long time, I've been educating for a very close to a decade in our industry. I've been around in the venue space for 32 years, right? And we started with the Knot when they first began in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was very different than it was now, because back then, a lot of our advertising dollars went into being in local print publication. If you're with me and you remember the day when print publication was the most important thing, like, I'm giving you a high five right now. The newer generation of wedding pros don't really remember those days. But I remember the allure of getting this badge of honor. I am a 2025 winner of this bogus award, but a lot of us felt a lot of pride for many, many years getting these WeddingWire awards, the Knot awards, and all that jazz. So we jumped in at the very, very beginning and have spent, I've calculated like 6 figures worth of advertising with the Knot and WeddingWire. And it was around in 2018 or 2019 that I noticed a really big shift happen with our business specifically, because Charlotte became very saturated, and it has become, even in the last 3 or 4 years, even more saturated. I think, but at my venue, there's 114 venues within a 30-mile radius, right? So that's a lot of people pouring marketing money into one pool of people that are getting engaged, right? And I noticed a really big shift that started happening. But one of the big things that I noticed was when the Knot and WeddingWire merged. That's when I started seeing something different happen. I noticed that I thought maybe that we'd start getting a discount because they're owned by the same company. And like, I just thought in my mind, like, it makes logical sense. Are we just going to have to pay one marketing agency now? Or are we still going to have to pay two? But what happened is that our fees actually went up. And it just kind of clued me in to the fact that something was very strange. And then we started getting these phone calls telling me that we needed to spend more money and trying to say, hey, listen, you need to get this spotlight ad. This is when I got really upset. You need to get this spotlight ad, Tirzah. But just do it for like and I was like, I don't want to do it for a year. Can I just do it for like 3 or 4 months during engagement season? And they're like, yeah, we could do that. And we're going to give you exclusive access to the spotlight banners. The one that goes across the top. I don't know if it's called spotlight or something else, but it's like the predominant place. And what I noticed is that I would go in to our page and that banner was not there, and it wouldn't be there for days. And then I would come back to them and I'd be like, hey, where is it? And I just started feeling a sense of doubt because I'm like, I'm paying $2,000 a month, a lot of money, for this advertisement, and it's not there. And then I started asking questions about the fact that I tracked this for about 15 months. About 60% of our leads that came through both of those platforms never responded to us once. A lot of them had all zeros in their phone number. They were bogus emails that popped back to us, or if they're a real email and they didn't bounce back, they never responded. And so we spent a lot of time and money following up with leads that were not responding. Now, are we going to talk about today if those are fake leads? We are definitely going to talk about that. But I just wanted to share where I'm coming from. That this isn't just some hearsay about, oh, I hear all these people in these different Facebook groups whining and complaining about this big marketing platform. I'm here to tell you that I have, since the beginning of this business, and I was trying to look back at my records to see when we actually started. I feel like it was the early 2000s, but I would have to look back. But I've been marketing and spending a lot of money with this company that has drastically changed. And I don't think that they were founded, I think that there was good in the beginning, but I definitely feel like it has shifted. So anyway, I wanted to just start with that because I want you to know, like, this is my personal story. And I invited Jennifer to be here because I feel like a really strong sense of justice and love and protection over the wedding community and the venue owners specifically. Again, I feel like knowledge is important. We're not telling you to not market with them, but we're just telling you there are some things that you need to know before you dump thousands and thousands of dollars into this marketing platform. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment and we're just going to jump into this. And I would love for you, Jennifer, to just talk about what is your mission and why did you kind of decide to go public with the Not Whistleblowers?
Sure, and thank you for that introduction. When I talk, I'm going to use the expression we or us a lot, and I just wanted everybody to know that that's because there's 3 of us. I just have the privilege of being our spokesperson. So Rachel LaFera, a former colleague of mine, was with the company 18, 19 years, worked with local vendors for a very long period of her career at the Knot, and then also worked with national advertisers. And she ended up, at the time that she departed, was the director of fine jewelry for the Knot. So worked in the jewelry space and really owned that category. And then Cindy Ellie, who also happens to be my sister, I was with the company about 19 years, and she exclusively throughout her career during that time period worked with local vendors, tons of venues, and photographers, florists, cake bakers. And so she sort of had ownership of a big footprint in the Texas market, actually. Just highly decorated salesperson, both Rachel and Cindy. And then my background, I also worked with local vendors for about the first part of my career. And so I worked with venues and the photographers and everybody that it takes to pull together a wedding in this space. And then I transitioned into the national division as well, and I headed up our fashion category. So I worked with the national bridal designers. I also helped establish our bridal salon program. And anyway, as you mentioned, Tirzah, the company definitely was established legitimately and had a great reputation, and there was a genuine, I think, drive to make the company extremely successful. I was at the company about 22 years when I left. But what we noticed, and the reason why we stepped out and started to report was, and remember, like, we were there in the earliest days of the company. So, like, I believe I started in 1996. And so about a year into the company's founding. And but around 2015, not actually, because it was experiencing sort of antiquated technology that the Knot.com website ran on, and just headwinds from having worked with so many wedding professionals. And there's only so many brides in the United States a year, right? And so for a variety of reasons, they determined that they needed to refresh the website. The messaging out, because the company was public at that time and kind of struggling to meet Wall Street expectations. But the idea was, and the messaging was, to rebuild the Knot.com website from the studs up, meaning a brand new website. So in March of 2015, when they pulled the trigger on that, we noticed as salespeople and employees that there were technology issues, major issues. So, for example, we were documenting and flagging that our clients' ads were not always running as sold. And so if a client's ad was supposed to appear in a certain place, we noticed that it had just fallen off the website. And we were told initially, okay, there's some glitches, we're working through these bugs. Well, and then as time went by and those were not actually addressed and it kept happening, what we were experiencing, I would just call it gaslighting. It was very confusing, but we were being told, on the one hand, yes, that's true and that's happening, but then as we amplified our concerns, we kept speaking up, then we were being retaliated against. And it was sort of you're not really seeing that. But then it was like, or it's just happening to you. It's just happening to your advertisers. But it's not happening to anyone else. It's isolated. Well, then when you talk to 100 other salespeople approximately, and it's happening to all of them, you're like, no, we all know this is happening. But it was just one of those things like, don't look behind the curtain. Great and powerful Oz back there kind of pulling levers.
Yep.
And it was going on. And then somebody actually who absolutely knew what was going on, I kind of got, eyeball to eyeball with, and I'm like, what is going on? This is nuts. And they said, it's not a new website. It is newer technology duct taped on top of old technology, and it can't talk to each other. And so it's degrading, and every day it's getting worse and worse and worse. This is back in 2015, 2016. Then fast forward, I find out from someone who worked with our client contracts that, you are correct, this is going on. And by the way, the executives are standing over our desk and they're telling us to falsify client contracts on the back end, which had to do with revenue. I mean, what we learned was, yes, we knew the ads were falling off regularly. It was impacting a tremendous amount of the company's business and impacting a very large number of vendors, but they were also cooking the books financially that were going out to the SEC, federal regulators, the numbers going out to Wall Street analysts in order to drive that stock price up. And this is in the lead up to the merger with WeddingWire. And all of that's like a little bit complicated, but for wedding vendors listening to this, I just want you to understand, we started speaking up a very long time ago, a decade ago now. We just hit the, March 2025. Okay, so we started speaking up March, April 2015. But then we stepped outside of the company and it completely removed ourselves from the company. Rachel and I, in 2017, 2018, we took these concerns to the federal government because we could see that as we were reporting fraud at the company was covering up. And the company was conducting a sham internal investigation using an outside law firm. And, it was very apparent. I won't go into all like the minutia of what was going on, but it was very apparent this was not a genuine investigation into the allegations, not just our allegations, but other colleagues who were sitting and sharing their evidence. And we can demonstrate this. And so it just wasn't successful. The authorities were not able to hold the company accountable for a variety of reasons. Some of our colleagues that we know were talked to in this process or were interviewed in the process told us that they made false and misleading statements and statements that we know, in saying these things to regulators, wow, that's perjury. You just lied for the company. But we believe that statements were made that were untruthful because of employees' hands that were dirty in this. Like they knew that they had been doing some things that were not correct, even unlawful, highly unlawful. And so there was a culpability there. Other employees, we think, were terrified, and threatened. We were being threatened. The difference between us, though, the reason I'm able to sit here and talk to you and let other people hear my voice is that we did not sign non-disclosure agreements. We did not take hush money. We had the opportunity to separate from the company, to accept packages that would have included a tremendous financial benefit to ourselves, and sign documents. But what we want everyone to know about, just as Americans in general, that when you sign a non-disclosure agreement, typically, if not, regularly, almost always, there's going to be fine print in that document that states something along the lines of, I never saw any wrongdoing. And so if you take that money in exchange for your signature on those papers, you automatically discredit yourself later. So just as an example, if we had signed those documents and then we had sat for federal authorities and said, this is what the company's doing, these are the things we saw, here's our evidence and whatnot, the company would then say in exchange, well, here's a piece of paper saying that they said they didn't see any wrongdoing. And so either they're lying now or they were lying when they signed the documents. But either way, they're a liar. And so that's the thing that everybody needs to be aware of. And that's what keeps wrongdoing concealed. It's our argument that that is what has kept what has been going on within the walls of the Knot for all of this time under wraps. It is this buying the silence or threatening and coercing the silence out of their own employees. Look, we have heard from over 150 employees that have contributed to our evidence. That is an enormous number of employees that know about what's going on. That's an enormous amount of evidence to substantiate what we are saying.
Yeah, and let me just say, when you talk about the numbers, if any of you guys are listening and you haven't joined the Facebook group, and we'll actually link it in the show notes, that way you could join the group. I think that was a very important part of all of this, because all of the sudden people were sharing their stories and everyone's comparing. It gives me chills, honestly, that the script, and I can't say it's a script, but I kind of like when
it is a script. I'm going to interrupt you. It is a script.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I was going to say is it has to be, because everyone's sharing their stories and it's almost verbatim the exact things that are happening to everyone. And when you talk about gaslighting, I'm like, I know that's a very like cliche word these days, but the way that they do that to us as paying consumer, like big ticket, like we are as a venue spending probably more than anyone. Maybe photographers are right up there too, but I think like the venues and the photographers, we are sustaining that platform with the amount of money that we pay. And when I started kind of telling them, hey, I have some concerns about these leads that are not responding. And I never even said the words like these are fake leads. I'm just like, I'm concerned. A lot of these names coming from your platform are bogging up my system and they're taking time away from us actually following up with real leads. The lady was like, get on the phone with me, Tirzah. I need to talk to you. And I'm like, well, what's this about? So we get on the phone and it was a video call, but she wouldn't turn on her video. And she was in New York and she says, I need to tell you, like, you have a really, really great lead funnel and we've brought you all of this business. And I could tell you for a fact that all of these such and such people, and she goes, I have a list of all the names, have been booked at your venue because of your advertising with us. And I said, hey, I think that's great. Why don't you give me all of those names? And she did. And I could tell you, like, half of them, I'd never even heard of them before. And I'm like, I don't even understand that you brought this argument to me because I've never even heard of these people. And then she took it so far to say that if I stopped advertising with them, that my business was going to fail. You can't not market with the Knot and WeddingWire, Tirzah. And she used this fear tactic with me. And I'm sharing this with you because that conversation where she basically told me about these leads and it took me time to figure out, well, that was bogus. I couldn't answer that in the spot, right? But they are doing the same thing to everyone. And then when I got to the point where I was like, I've had enough, I want to cancel, it took me months. And I wasn't under a contract because I've been with them since the Stone Ages, right? They kept charging me. I kept emailing them. And then they were like, oh, it was the end of the month. You didn't let us know in time. Okay, well, I'm telling you for next month. Oh, they're on vacation. And there was always oh, that person doesn't work for us anymore. And it slipped through the cracks. I think it was about 5 or 6 months that this went on. In what world would that be okay when you're being charged thousands of dollars and they never refunded me or anything like that? And this same thing has happened to thousands of other wedding vendors. And this is the point that we're trying to draw your attention to, listeners, is that okay? Like, maybe this platform works for some people, and I get that, but I can tell you that there are shady practices going on, and thousands of people know that to be true. And the same thing is happening. So you talked about like not being paid to be silent. And I want to just tell you, like, Jennifer, I'm so grateful. It takes a lot of, honestly, like, courage to do what you're doing. I know that there's been backlash about it in terms of like, why are you just now saying something? And I want to reiterate the fact that you aren't just now saying something. It's taken you tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. I know it's deeply impacted you and the other two ladies personally. You guys have really sacrificed a lot for the good of this industry, and I want to thank you for that. And I know that you've put your neck out there. And so first of all, just thank you. But I will tell you that I was at an event. It was last year, and it was a big wedding focused event. And I had just publicly said something about the Knot on my social media. And someone from the Knot was at that event, and they came up to me and actually said to me in a very like unfriendly way, I'll just say, I'm watching you, Tirzah. I saw what you posted and I'm watching you. Doesn't that feel like kind of big brother to you? Like that someone would come to you, I'm getting ready to speak at a big wedding conference, and he comes up to me and he's like, I'm watching you. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, am I not allowed free speech in this country to talk about my experience? And so I don't know what you would have to say about that, but I think that's what's led a lot of wedding educators to be kind of silent about this. A lot of people are kind of, I don't want to say in bed with the Knot and WeddingWire, but their businesses are connected, they're wedding pro educators. So they may not love their marketing, but they can't really say anything. And so I'm just over here wanting to be a truth speaker, and I'm not going to let anyone threaten me into silence.
Yeah.
And
well,
so anyway, I don't know what you have to say about that, but that's just a little bit more of kind of why I feel so passionate about this.
I have a quite a response to what you just downloaded, and I don't want to forget any of it. So first of all, you're welcome. It's our privilege to speak up. And what we say to people when people ask, like, why are you doing this? I try not to get upset or defensive, but it's like, gosh, why would people ask a question why you're doing something when so clearly all we're trying to do is the right thing, which is to speak up and tell the truth about what we know. To help other people. And that's something that I think innately everybody knows. You just try to do the right thing. Like, we all know right from wrong. I think the difference with us is that even though we have been afraid, and I will admit it has been very scary, particularly in the beginning, because we just didn't know how to handle the situation. We didn't know how to properly speak up. Subject for another time. We do want to do something about that too. We want to help other people understand, what do you do when you see wrongdoing in the workplace? Because it does happen frequently. Maybe not to this extent and this kind of crazy of a story. But with that said, we know what it's like to feel intimidated. We understand where it's coming from, and we've experienced it ourselves. But when you hear over and over again, I'm afraid, or the vendors themselves talking about how they are fearful of retaliation. Gosh, let's just talk about that from a customer service standpoint. That's nuts. Why in the world would somebody who is paying for a service be afraid of the people that they are paying, for that service? So that's just a real head scratcher right there. That's troubling to hear that phrase used. We hear that from employees, of course. But I want you to know, like, the things that you were experiencing in your own relationship, not only did we see those things as employees ourselves for a combined almost 60 years, but as I mentioned, we hear from employees regularly at all levels. And when the employees themselves at all different levels are saying, we are doing this, it is intentional, not getting back to the clients is intentional. They, when you talk about like wouldn't turn on their video, our understanding, and a lot of this is firsthand knowledge and some of it is, real time employees sharing this information with us. So like I'm wearing a headset to talk to you. There's a system that the not sales reps often wear or like regular practice wear. Their sales management is able to listen into those calls and oftentimes talks to them in their ear. I had multiple salespeople reach out to us, and in talking to them, they were describing how, and I'll just give a couple scenarios. In one case, the sales rep was describing how they were speaking to a vendor in the Pacific Northwest that was a little bit more advanced in age, and the person was talking about like the fixed income that they were on and the type of business that they did. And the sales rep is saying that she knew full well that this wasn't going to return on investment for this person. But they were even going as far as to like listen to their sales director saying, tell this person to open a credit card and take out, a bank loan to pay for this, and that it'll pay for itself within the first couple of months. And then the salesperson was sort of laughing like, well, yeah, he didn't get a single booking the whole year. And, of course I knew he wasn't. I kind of felt bad about that one. And I'm having to listen to this, trying to just bite through my tongue, not to just blow up at this person like, how can you? And, it's just like this. There's a lot of confusion, I think, with even some of the sales reps themselves, because you have to remember, just like we were gaslit by the organization when we were speaking up and saying, hey, like, I'm seeing this isn't right. They tell us that they're experiencing the same thing. Oh, no, we don't send fake leads. Oh, no, say this, say that. But at the same time, they're saying that their superiors, are admitting to them this is how it works. And if they do speak up, they are kind of told, look, fall back in line or else, you're out of a job. Like they have described to us how they're incentivized not to get back to the vendors because it will come out of their budget if you cancel. And so there's this.
I want to sit in what you just said for a moment, right? This is the number one thing that people are saying in that group and Facebook is that these representatives are incentivized to not respond to you and not let you out of your contract. Just hear that and sit in that crazy for a moment.
That is not only being told to us, we have evidence of that over and over and over again. And I do want to make this very clear. These are violations of federal law. The Federal Trade Commission has very clear laws for consumer protection. Why they have not stepped in on this matter to pay attention, I don't know. I mean, Senator Grassley is asking these very tough questions. We took this matter to him. And when the organization was able to escape accountability, when we were reporting them for these issues and for the financial fraud scheme, we had to read the stories like you're referencing right there about people being told that this is going to be a fantastic investment for them never being able to reach another salesperson again, or it taking a very long time for someone to get back to them being told that it's their fault. Oh, well, you're not successful because your photos aren't right or your copy's not right, or, one reason after another why it's the vendor's fault and not the services that the Knot is providing to that vendor. So again, like the gaslighting, them having a rightful ability to cancel that contract but not being able to, and having it always say, oh, well, we kept hearing, I was on vacation. I couldn't get back to you in time for you to cancel. Vendors saying, hey, look, 2 months in, mark my contract for cancellation at the 12-month mark. And yet they're not allowed to do that. You have to call within this finite window. Now, apparently, the company is stating and reiterating since the very recent enactment of the click to cancel rule with the FTC that you can more easily cancel. We are still hearing from vendors that is not the case. We'll leave that up to the authorities to determine whether or not these rules are being, adhered to or not. But I can tell you that the salespeople themselves are telling us it's highly intentional. There's a very detailed script in the sales process. There is a very deliberate answer to the clients. I mean, look, if I sat here and told you some of the things that we have been told, your hair would be standing straight up. I'm not kidding. We're going to have to just hold back some of those details for another time. And, I can just tell everybody what we know is in the hands of the right authorities. and people that can
Right.
actually do things about this. So
I want to just highlight a couple things from the consumer side. So I can tell you that when I finally was able to cancel with them after all that time, I then was like, hey, I don't really want to be on your platform. I didn't immediately say that, but what I thought that our ad or our existence on the Knot would kind of go away. Well, our ad, not our ad, our profile was still there. Well, here's the tricky thing that happened. Hundreds of other people are saying the same thing. So if we changed anything about our business, changed our minimums, changed our pricing, changed, our wanting, there was a time that we really wanted to reduce the amount of pictures of our barn. And so we were changing all of our marketing. But you go to our, our profile on the Knot, and it's like a big picture of the barn, right? And we were trying to get away from that. And so you go to try to edit it, and because you're not a paying customer with them, you're not marketing with them, all of a sudden you don't have access to your dashboard anymore. And so false information was out there, and we couldn't even edit it.
right.
And
So
it was extremely frustrating.
I want to answer that question. So one of the things going on, and a big issue that's been raised by vendors, is this very issue of the intellectual property. So in the fine print of the contracts, when you hand over your credit card information to the Knot, you're essentially handing over your intellectual property forever. And so that is part of the fear that we hear over and over again, directly from vendors and then from also, just reading their accounts online. And it's referred to actually, I believe, as the Roach Motel, where, you can check in, but you can't check out. And so that's part of what vendors tell us is, I feel like I'm beholden to them now for my SEO and for my reviews. The reviews is a big thing. Your review, you're the vendor who provided the service to that couple, but yet you are feeling like you don't have access to what was said about the job you did for that couple. And so that's one issue. But also with the IP, another thing that's going on, and you can even see videos about this on the internet more recently, people describing their experience. And so there's artificial intelligence apparently being utilized to write about vendors. So you upload your storefront onto the Knot, you provide your pictures and your description. Our understanding is that the Knot is rewriting those descriptions based on what benefits their search engine optimization. What you have to remember is the search engine optimization is designed to benefit traffic to the Knot. We do not believe that it is designed to benefit the traffic to you as an individual paying vendor. And that is what we believe. We believe like the best of badges. I can tell you the best of weddings program, those badges have backlinks code embedded on them that drives traffic to the Knot, not to you, Tirzah. And so that's another big issue. I just want people to be aware of that.
Yes. Do you remember the very first time that we talked and I said this to you? I was like, Jennifer, I have this, and I had never said it out loud to anyone. And I just thought, well, I am not an SEO expert, but I had been, learning a lot, especially as I've been leaning into a lot more of my consulting stuff and been working like very closely with venues on their SEO. And it literally happened to me in the middle of the night once. And I just had this epiphany, and I'm like, and maybe most people are like, duh, Tirzah, we've known that forever. But I was like, this is a scam. The Knot WeddingWire badges and the whole awards, get 10 5-star reviews and you get this badge. So everyone basically gets it. It's not even special anymore, right? Like, how easy is it to get 10 reviews, right? Are all about backlinks so that they could have incredible SEO. And we are then taking those badges and putting them all on our website, driving people, listen to me, away from our website. They click on it to look at these reviews, and it takes them away from our website. And so we're giving them all of this incredible SEO by linking those badges to our websites.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they created it for their own good, because I guarantee
another thing where I think it started out legitimate a very long time ago, but like one of the things that we documented going back, this is just so many years, was that the Best Of program, just as an example, we have documented accounts of those not running where they're supposed to, or even like I think that it used to be, well, if you won Best of Weddings and you paid for it, because was a fee for that for the longest time. that you're going to get 5 times more traffic than if you don't have the best of program. And here's the package and what it comes with, including those badges. Well, oftentimes those badges were actually not running and you weren't running in the best of area. And I mean, there were times when people were down for 6, 7, 8+ months of a 12-month program. And, the answer that the company would give back to salespeople usually was, well, does the client know? Well, if the client didn't know that their ad wasn't appearing, the client, I remember, I shouldn't go into too granular details, but I can just tell you when I was reporting these issues going on with my clients, the response was swift and fierce. And I know from, colleagues and even current salespeople, these sort of practices with the website instability, we maintain that website tech stack is extremely problematic for the company and was at the core of a lot of these issues. But I actually want to go back for a second, Tirzah, and I kind of want to put in context for people like what we think is going on. And, every vendor knows there's only so many brides a year in the United States, and these vendors are competing for them. It's around 2 million couples a year, or 2 million brides a year. Well, around 2012, because the Knot had been around for quite some time, they were already experiencing a constriction of traffic. And, then you enter in places where other people can see pretty pictures, like on Instagram or Pinterest or things of that nature. And, they were just kind of facing some real issues with traffic. And they had sold to so many vendors like yourself. You said you'd been advertising for a really long time. So as you continue to saturate your website platform with more wedding professionals, but your consumer base who needs to retain those vendors, and you need to provide a return on investment for those vendors, those numbers are not matching up. And like you come to like a point of where things are going to converge and you really have a problem on your hands. And so that's what we believe is going on, is that the website platforms at the Knot and WeddingWire are just oversaturated. So whereas there might have been, 100 wedding venues at one time, now there might be 500, but you still have the same number of brides or less, because it looks like the number of people getting married or it's going back a little bit, or they're getting married older. And, for a variety of reasons, you just have kind of an eyeball constriction, consumer constriction going on. So we believe that's what's going on. At the time we first started speaking up, all the way back in 2015, we knew that the Knot was going to work really well for about 20% of the people. Our vendors that would appear and pay at the very top of that page where you'd come up, we called it soaking up the eyeballs. So if you're paying a lot more and you're appearing at the top of the page, you're probably going to get a much better return on your investment than one of like the featured vendors or the professional listings that come down further in the page. And so we believe that's what's going on. But these sales reps are telling us, oh, we know it's not going to work for 80% of the people we're selling to. We know. Sales directors are telling us that. It's just, in our opinion, sort of, universally understood. And so that's the problem. And I think people look at this. Part of the problem is when you talk about the Knot and allegations of wrongdoing, it's in this beautiful wrapper of the wedding space. It's gorgeous. It's love. It's, a happy occasion. It just does not come across as nefarious at all. But when you really think about it, it's a business. And the business just happens to operate in the wedding space. But it is a financial establishment. That's what it is. It's there to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you cross the line into doing things that are illicit, improper, we would say highly illegal. And we think that illegal activity has been going on for a very long time. And we are just absolutely committed to getting the right attention on this so that this can be looked into and so that it can be addressed.
And I have to say, like, when I started to really like dig into this, even in the last, like, I would say it's been about 6 years at this point, that I have been one of the very few, I don't want to say the only, but I'm in the venue coaching space, probably one of the only ones that has been like a yellow flashing sign, just warning, you know what I mean? Just like a gentle warning, like, hey, this is happening. And I started to kind of just step back outside of myself. And, when I stopped paying them money, I'm coaching people that are spending, I have a few clients out in California that are spending, thousands of dollars a month marketing with them. And their businesses are actually struggling. Even aside from that, the venue space as a whole is really struggling with oversaturation right now, right? So anyway, I've just kind of like taken that bird's eye view, and I started noticing the Knot has people, and I'm not going to name names, that are very strategic to be at all of these industry events so that they could come along, and I believe they pay to be sponsors or whatever so that they have access to be educators or to be at these events. And they are spending so much of their time, to me, just being there to massage the opinion, to control the narrative, actually. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, they want to be there, and they don't want it to become they don't want people to join together and talk openly about this. And when they're there, they're able to control the narrative, and they're everywhere. And it's amazing to me. Like, I had even been helping out with, I don't want to name names again, but like a rising education platform, and the Knot came, and within 2 weeks of us launching, they wanted to buy it. Can you even imagine? Like, they don't want other associations to be formed and to publicly, bring enlightenment to some of these things. And
yeah, can I jump in on that for a second,
Go
Tirzah?
for it.
So one thing I have not touched on is, I was talking about, how far back we go at the Knot, but we do not believe that WeddingWire and the Knot should have ever been allowed to merge in the first place. We believe that it is an unlawful monopoly. I can tell you for a fact that employees at the time at the company were like, the company was stating to employees, don't use they called it the M word. Don't say monopoly, don't say monopoly, don't say the M word. There was a script provided, tell the advertisers that we're going to, when we combine with WeddingWire, we're going to pass along the operational cost savings to you, the advertiser. They would have had.
That was told to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I know. Look, we've seen it and we know it. They would have had to have told and reassured the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice Antitrust Division that not only were they not going to raise prices, but that this was going to be something good for the industry. I do know that leading up to that merger, they were monkeying with their statistics to try to show that they had a lesser footprint and saturation in the wedding space than they did. If you ask a salespeople how many, businesses are doing business with the Knot, you'd get an answer from the salespeople that was like, gosh, it feels like a 90%, like we've tapped out this marketplace. I'm not saying that was the number, but it really felt like from a sales perspective, you're the one calling these businesses every day. There's only so many wedding businesses in a given market. But they were telling the government that they had only tapped 5% of the United States marketplace. I think that's preposterous personally, as some, and I can tell you whether it's a finance employee, a product employee or a sales employee, marketing, we believed in as employees that wasn't true, but they were told, hey, the government's going to secret shop you in reviewing this merger, and you're to just deflect their questions and tell them, oh no, it's not going to be a monopoly. But here's the definition. I'm sorry. I just want to make one other point. The definition is, can you raise rates on an industry? Well, I can tell you from the minute the coast was clear and this company escaped accountability, when that government investigation that we, kicked off went away, they started to jack up rates on this industry radically. So someone like yourself, we have seen rates go up, I think at a minimum around 75, 80%, and in a lot of cases more than 400%, and going up about 30% year over year, compounding over all these years. And so even if someone is having a great experience with them as a vendor, and of course we want them to, we hope they are, we're not telling anybody not to advertise with them, but we would say, are you not paying more today as a result of the Knot and WeddingWire being a combined company than you would have in 2018 when they were separate entities? We have a very strong argument with the rate cards that this company has done exactly the opposite of what they would have assured federal authorities and this industry that they were going to do. And the venue category has taken it on the chin more than anyone. Photographers have taken it on the chin. Those like bread and butter categories, the bigger ticket items, that is really, but nobody can afford those kind of increases, particularly when a lot of them are saying, hey, I'm getting actually a lesser return on investment than I was before. So these are antitrust issues that we want the FTC and the Department of Justice Antitrust to take very seriously This is a beloved American industry. This touches every American. Everybody is exposed to weddings at some point, if not many, many times. And it's an industry that should be protected just like any other. Just because it has a gorgeous brand wrapper doesn't mean that it is immune from federal oversight. It's not.
Right, right. So I don't know if you could answer this, and this is what I was going to ask, because I've probably read every article that has been published about this situation. I've done a lot of research. I'm not sure what can be said about this, but so why did they merge? And is there anything that you could say about the lawsuit that was happening with the Knot? Like, what can you say about why they merged?
So from our perspective as employees, what we knew to be true was that the story that was going out to Wall Street analysts who were, having to determine if they were going to invest in the company, and to the Securities and Exchange Commission, who they have to report their numbers into, we would say that the company was not doing well as it represented. And in fact, it was struggling financially tremendously. There was bad debts on the book that were not disclosed. We can demonstrate that. The company was kind of hemorrhaging, so to speak, financially. And they were just in a real financial crisis. And there had been a new CEO brought in around 2013. The idea was to pivot the Knot from this subscription-based media model where you as a vendor or another wedding vendor is paying the Knot a monthly subscription fee for media. The idea was to pivot the company away more to like an Open Table, an Etsy, even an Amazon house, like where the company would take a cut of every transaction within the walls of the company. They actually tested it in the venue space. It was called the concierge program. And I believe like one of the key test markets was Austin, Texas, as an example. And so they tested whether or not they could kind of retrain the brides to use a different format for the Knot, where they would book the services through the Knot, and then the venue would pay the Knot a significant, a much higher percentage of the transaction, because into the venue, it's like, hey, if I know for a fact this bride came through the Knot, I will pay you a little bit more money. So that was the test. It failed, and we are told by the tech team that it failed because, again, the website technology couldn't make it work, and it was costly. Again, there were some financial issues. Well, the company shuttered that whole program, that test, but they don't tell Wall Street analysts. So Wall Street analysts are asking on earnings calls about the program and how it's going. And the CEO and the CFO are just tap dancing around those answers, not giving fully transparent answers. And really, if you read what they were saying in the transcripts, you can see they're deflecting the questions, because even 6 months, 12 months, 18 months after that program was completely shut down, and employees inside the company were told, that's a secret, keep it quiet. We can't have anybody know that program's been shuttered. The analysts are still asking about it on earnings calls while they're a public company. So this is the analogy. Think about it this way. You're Ford Motor Company, and you tell Wall Street analysts and your investors that you're going to not be a gas-fueled car company any longer. You're going to pivot, and you're going to be all electric within a certain time frame. And your technology to do that actually fails. And you shutter the program, but you don't tell your analysts and you don't tell your investors. I mean, those are very serious issues. Those things have to be disclosed. It's actually called a stated growth strategy. So again, just using the Ford model, if Ford states a stated growth strategy and they say they're going to do X, Y, Z, if that does not work out, you owe those very transparent answers to your investors. That didn't happen. But the company was struggling. Two of the things that Rachel and I first started speaking up about our clients not getting what they were paying for, one of those things involved us selling targeted media. So for example, if one of my fashion advertisers wanted to reach a bride at the time she was buying a wedding dress, I mean, that's what they want to use their marketing dollars for. It doesn't do them any good if they're selling to a bride that's already got her wedding dress. So they had to target their media to the certain pages on the Knot where brides were looking for that information. We didn't have it. We were oversold, and we knew this. We knew that we were out of inventory. We were out of eyeballs, clicking around on pages of the knot.com. And so they were jacking with those contracts on the back end. They were selling it as if they had it, but then they were delivering that media elsewhere, not to the pages that they told. So the customer might have spent, $1,000 for every bride they were supposed to reach. And, they paid a large cost per thousand for that, when in fact we were giving them junk media in exchange. And because it's digital media, you can't see it. It's air. It's not like the print pages you were talking about, Tirzah, back in the day when you could see that your ad ran on page 25. You can't see that when it's digital media, nor should you be expected to sit at your computer every day as a vendor and look at your ad to see if it's running where it's supposed to. But that was what was occurring. They were cooking the books on the back end. We have this really dead to rights in this issue with our allegations. And the books were just wholly fraudulent that they were turning over to regulators. And so we believe that that is why they also, with going back to the technology was so flawed. They were having issues with their billing. They were having issues with their commission, paying their reps. There were just issues with the technology that were impacting the financials. And you can't have that, not only as a public company, but you really can't have it as a private company either, because you're reporting those numbers to someone, either banks, credit agencies. Your books have got to be right. There's a reason why, there's regulations around these things. But we believe that is why there was this rush to combine the company with WeddingWire. And we believe, because now it's owned by private equity firms, it's our opinion, this is our opinion, that there was a desire to monopolize this industry, because that's what most people would say private equity firms do. They look for industries where they can come in and they can dominate a space. And to say that the Knot and WeddingWire were not the two primary competitors in this space, we don't think that's accurate. We don't think they should have ever been allowed to combine. We don't think that this was really put under a proper microscope. But the evidence of that is the fact that the company has been able to demand higher rates of the industry, and that the industry feels beholden to pay those because of these variety of reasons that we talked about, this dominant position in the industry. And so just like Meta right now is in the hot seat with the FTC because of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and the ability to kind of box out those competitors, we would make an argument that the same thing is occurring here. And just like you said, to the person that was trying to have a startup that would compete in the Knot space, and you said they kind of swooped in and were like, hey, you can either sell it to us or we're going to duplicate what you're doing. I mean, just sort of that, I would say, menacing, threatening position of that power position. And just going to keep saying it. We're very grateful that Senator Grassley is asking federal authorities to look into this. People are getting hurt, we think.
And we are going to post the link for you to go directly to Senator Grassley's website that he's created just for our industry and to share your story. And I have done that, and I encourage you guys to do so. Listen, we know this in America. We know that we have the right to speak, and we're really good at it. When there are things that are passionate to us, we will go picket. We will go get loud and proud. We will post on social media. We as a country know how to do that, right? I'm telling you, I'm asking you, please, if you've had a negative experience and you resonate with anything that we're saying today, you need to speak up. You really need to speak up. It matters. And none of this will go anywhere if it was just on Jennifer and the other two ladies.